And hey, here we are with David Pepose, who's having probably one of the best days of his life.
It's been a pretty good day.
Am I right?
Yeah. It's definitely one of my favorite days in comics. That's for sure.
Because we talked a couple of weeks ago. You said, "Hey, I've got this project. I'm going to kickstart," and Project Saffron. Knew it wasn't Project Saffron, and then you told me what it was. I'm pretending like it's still a secret for some reason, and I realized we had talked about it last summer, back when there were conventions.
Yeah.
And you shown me like a JPEG, and then so I've seen some pages. So now we know what it is. Go ahead and speak for yourself, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm very excited that today's the first day of my Kickstarter, the OZ, which is What If the Hurt Locker Took Place in the Wizard of Oz? It's the story of Dorothy Gale's granddaughter, who's a disillusioned Iraq war veteran who suddenly finds herself trapped in the war-torn land of Oz. And so she's going to have to navigate her past and her grandmother's role in sort of igniting this magical conflict, not to mention classic mainstays like the Tin Soldier, the Scarecrow, the Courageous Lion, if she ever hopes to survive the occupied zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ.
Yeah.
I feel so relieved to finally be able to talk about this book. I've been working on this since 2017, since the first volume of Spencer Locke dropped. And, it's been a lot of stops and starts and kind of turns along the way. And I'm so excited to finally get to talk about it and to see readers' reactions for this book. I think as of last I checked, our back page, we're something like 250% funded right now, which is incredible. I think it's a testament to the hard work.
It just went up. It's like, I feel like now we're having the Jerry Lewis telethon, and and look at the board. Yeah, you went up to $15,204. Don't make me do that. So it's probably still around 250, but I just watched as I was checking. So,
it's exciting, and I think it's a testament to my creative team. I'm working with artist Ruben Rojas. This is sort of his big blow up debut in the American comic scene. I think it's long overdue. Working with Whitney Kogar, the colorist for the Eisner Award-winning Giant Days, and DC Hopkins, a veteran letterer who works at AndWorld Studios, and it's just it's like working with the A-Team. These guys are terrific, and I'm so glad that on day one the comics community immediately got it. I think that's something that can be a little challenging.
Was it like funded within the first hour? I mean, at 9 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah,
we were
funded in 2 hours. Almost 2 hours exactly. And I'd been really panicked. I always kind of prepare for the worst. And my worst was nobody's going to like this book. We're not going to get funded. My team's going to leave me. Even though I'd already paid them to keep working on the book. Down to like having nightmares that like Kickstarter was going to glitch on me or something, or not accept my proposal, even though they had already approved it. And you prepare for the worst, but I don't think you ever expect the best. And I feel like this is like the best case scenario. I feel like the industry really rallied around this book in a way that it really reminded me of the first Spencer Locke, where everybody who saw that book rallied around it. It was really incredible. And same thing with the OZ. I mean, we had so many creators, supporting us. We were getting shout outs from Scott Snyder, Gail Simone, Mark Russell, David Walker, just truly incredible names, and just, I think that's really kind of broadened how many people have checked us out. We've also had people from the Kickstarter community really pushing us. Charlie Stickney from White Ash, Ryland Grant, who just finished his Kickstarter for The Jump.
Oh, yeah.
I feel extremely fortunate, and I think it, I think it comes down to, when you've got a team as good as the team that I'm working with, and you push, and your friends help you out, magic can happen. And I think that's really been the case with this book.
Well, the real question is, how did John Layman respond to this? We're calling you out, Layman. We're calling you out. Anyway, no.
No, I have showed Layman part of the book, and he liked it as far as Layman can like things.
Right.
I've noticed that no retweets though, so Layman, you're on my list.
Well, I know I will make that point. I tagged him this morning, and I will, we'll go. So the OZ, it's I like the Hurt Locker meets Oz. So first of all, it's interesting. The response I got on, I think, my Facebook page today was somebody saying, like, finally, this is the kind of the grim and gritty, and I wasn't sure if that was a serious thing or not, but I guess it really is, and because if you're an Oz fan, you get drawn to everything that's Oz.
Yeah.
No matter what, you got to at least check it out. And there have been a few. There was like Secret Agents, the Oz Squad. Dorothy was one that I was very tangentially involved with many years ago. Mm-hmm. There was something Tin Man on Sci-Fi. So people have played with it, but you've got the idea that it is something completely. So first, what is about Oz that attracts you?
Well, for me, the thing that I really liked about Oz is, first off, it's built with these archetypes. These characters, you've got these very strong archetypes, and then you throw them together in a room, and I think their defining characteristics kind of sharpen the other people's. And I think that's a tradition that L. Frank Baum started in 1900 with that book, and was building on it for 20 novels. But you see it going all the way to Claremont's X-Men, or classic role-playing games, like Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VII. Chrono Trigger was actually a big influence on kind of the way that I put this book together, because you want these teams, you want everybody to sort of stand out on their own 2 feet, but then when you put them together, they've got like kind of a cool jam band sort of mentality. And the other thing I really like about Oz, and I wrote a term paper on this in college for a class in adolescent literature, is in a way it's sort of like a prototypical superhero universe or a sci-fi universe, where you've got all these different countries, and you've got all these different people, and you've got all these different species and power sets, and Baum was just building on this mythology, this continuity, really, novel after novel, in a way that this was decades before Stan and Jack ever came up with the Fantastic Four.
I had never thought of them that way, seriously. Even though I've enjoyed Oz superhero takes, and now that really, I just had to make us small, so we see you leaked out a little bit of extra art behind us, but. Yeah, that is interesting. Certainly, that was one of the first things that Mego did after their World's Greatest Superheroes. They went to the Wizard of Oz, and maybe that's why I liked it so much in the beginning. And also when you go back and actually read that first thing, adolescent literature, not by our standards anymore, because some of those backstories are really gross. Like, I'm happy in the art to see the Tin Man, which I always call him the Tin Man because it's the movie, but I know he's the Tin Woodsman, and you're calling him the Tin Soldier, or he's a different soldier. Who knows? Maybe there's a mystery.
No, he's the same one, same guy.
Nick Chopper.
Because it was one of those things. Like when I first thought of this, when I was first coming up with the character design, like I had kind of thought just absentmindedly, I was like, oh, give him a giant sword, and then I was like, no, like he's literally the Tin Woodsman. He needs an axe. The other thing I have to what
his origin is a gross story.
I mean, like it's for me what's so interesting, and I think it speaks to sort of the cinematic language of Oz. First off, I think the scale of Oz is somewhat analogous, to me anyway, of a fantasy version of Star Wars, Where Star Wars, you get into it and you immediately get this sense of scope and scale because you're hopping from planet to planet. They each have their own unique kind of vibe and tone and personality and internal high concept even. Tatooine, it's the desert planet. Hoth, the ice planet. Endor, it's sort of the rainforest planet. You've got, the bowels of the Death Star, which are very cold and sterile and claustrophobic. That's actually a conversation I had with our colorist, Whitney Kogar, where I said, what's the Mad Max version of Star Wars? That's what I want for this book. And she really took that ball and kind of ran with it. And I think that helps kind of establish the stakes and sort of a little bit of the globetrotting nature of this book. It's still sort of the nation of Oz, and sort of all these warring principalities all around it. But you get to go to the Deadly Desert. You get to go to the mountains on the border of Ix. You get to check out the Wicked Witch's castle. Or the bombed out Emerald City, and all these places have its own very unique and different vibe.
So, how much when you came across this idea, it appeared to you, how much did you go back to Baum's work just to kind of make sure, like, oh, what did you say about this?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's really, you have to kind of dance between the raindrops, because for people watching this, and I've seen a few people ask, oh, is this legal? A lot of armchair legal scholars, and thankfully,
it's public domain.
It's public domain. It's public domain. And so the interesting thing though is the L. Frank Baum novels are public domain. The movie is not.
Right.
And so you have to figure out, okay, what's an invention of the movie and what isn't. So you can't use ruby slippers, for example. They were an invention for Technicolor. But at the same time, you also have to be realistic, knowing that most people's popular, like the popular consensus is the Judy Garland film. And so you're thinking, all right, where's the overlap here? And there's a pretty strong amount of overlap. But figuring out, what's considered universal, and then what's the sort of Easter eggs that you can cherry pick that like the diehards will be like, oh, hey, he's talking about the mountaintops of Ix. Versus like
well played.
Yeah. Yes. It's not going to throw somebody out of the story.
Right.
And so that said, in that way, those limitations were good for me. It sort of kept me from having too much rope to hang myself, because the Marvel and the DC universes, Oz is pretty in depth. There's a lot going on there. So we did try to keep things sort of to that core team from the original Wizard of Oz that people would know about, but then throwing in the settings for sure. I will say Jack Pumpkinhead. I've always had a soft spot for that character. The visual really grabbed me from kind of a young age. Jack plays a pretty important role. He appears a little in our first issue, and he shows up more in our second and third issues. But yeah, it's sort of taking these iconic archetypes that we all know, they're universal, and then either being able to kind of remix them a little bit, but also to take those core characteristics and just take them to the logical extreme. And that was really good. It kind of gave me a lot of options to explore things dramatically that still felt organic. And I think that kind of made it helped me sort of build the emotional arcs for all these characters, and sort of seeing their reactions to the war that's been brewing across Oz ever since the original Dorothy Gale killed the Wicked Witch.
Yeah, and her granddaughter is also named Dorothy, right?
Also named Dorothy. So really the quick sort of way that we got to the OZ is we reframed Dorothy killing the Wicked Witch as something like a botched regime change. Dorothy kills the Wicked Witch. She convinces the wizard, she inspires the wizard to leave. She clicks her heels 3 times and goes back home. And, you've seen the movie. They try to kind of wrap it up in a nice, neat little bow. But as somebody who grew up during the invasion of Iraq, that's not how it works. It kind of, invites this horrible power vacuum. That's sort of the ugly truth about tyrants, is that they don't just rule through fear and power, but it's this really consolidated sense of control. And when you knock that down, there's a lot of ripple effects that even, there are unintended consequences that come even from like the best of intentions. And so that's kind of how we explored the OZ, is that, without these sort of major power players in the land of Oz, and the person who killed one of them just leaves, it's a power grab. People are fighting for a piece of the pie. It's a little Game of Thrones. And so we cut to a generation later, and Dorothy Gale's granddaughter, who is also, her namesake, Dorothy, she's an Iraq war veteran, and she's taken some scars back with her. She's seen some things,
PTSD, right?
In a major way. She's grappling with trauma and survivor's guilt, and just this kind of sense of disillusionment of just what was it all for. And she's come home to take care of her grandmother who's battling Alzheimer's, and so she's been hearing these stories for a while about yellow brick roads and munchkins and things on the other side of the rainbow, and has anybody fed Toto? And it really kind of breaks Dorothy's heart. Because
you let me read those pages, and when she's asking for, I'm like,
it's heartbreaking. And so our new Dorothy, she's really struggling to find her way, and unfortunately, that's kind of sidetracked when a tornado hits their small Kansas town, and she's dropped into this magical battlefield. And this, for Dorothy, it's sort of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, a place like the OZ, it's very triggering for her. It really dredges up some of the worst moments of her life. But on the other hand, I think deep down, she sees it as a second chance, as a way to make things right. I think that's part of the reason why I like exploring trauma in my stories. And I feel like whether it's sort of dark and psychological like Spencer and Locke, or even sort of the commitment style trauma of going to the chapel, I feel like that's where these characters come from, is that they're kind of trapped in that cycle of the moments that hurt them the most. And I think that's something we can all relate to. Those are the struggles of our lives is, can you confront these traumas? Do you have to escape these traumas or bury them, or do they define you? And so I think that's going to be a journey that Dorothy's going to have to take. But I think we one up that from some of my previous work, because there's the scale and the stakes are different. And so Dorothy has spent a lot of time, even before the OZ, kind of thinking about, the morality of war. And now she's has this role of leadership thrust upon her by virtue of who her grandmother was. And suddenly she's got to think, okay, there's a moral calculus to every decision, because every choice can wind up with somebody dead. And whether that's her or her friends or her enemies or whatever poor bystander is unlucky enough to kind of walk into the crossfire, these are all questions that Dorothy has to ask herself, because it's one thing to fight a war. And I think she's discovered it's entirely a different thing to build the peace. And so she's going to be thinking quite often, what's the right move here? Can we break this cycle? And that's going to be something that Dorothy is really going to have to grapple with in her time in Oz.
So I'm going to ask you a practical question that's at the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
There's a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Spencer and Locke and Spencer and Locke 2 and Going to the Chapel. We're all Action Lab comics.
Sure.
So why are you taking this to Kickstarter?
There's a lot of reasons for that. First off, I've been looking at Kickstarter for a very long time. I'm friends with Charlie Stickney from White Ash. Ryland Grant just had a really successful Kickstarter with The Jump. Russell Nahelty is a friend of mine. He's got like a laundry list of projects that he's backed on there. Pat Shand has had a lot of success with Destiny New York and its ancillary titles. And so my friends have been kind of press ganging me since I think October, saying, you really should try Kickstarter. You should really try Kickstarter. And the thing that sort of got me to realize, maybe I should try this, is they were telling me, there's some people who just buy their comics at a comic shop, right? Primarily at a comic shop. And there's some people who primarily buy their books on Amazon or Comixology. and some people who buy their books primarily at cons, RIP. And
They'll come back.
They'll come back whenever they come back. But there are some people that buy their books primarily on crowdfunding, Kickstarter or and the like. And so I realized I want to keep building my audience. I want to keep drawing people in. And it doesn't matter, how hard I work at Spencer and Locke or going to the chapel. There's going to be a subsection of people that are not going to buy that book just by virtue of they don't shop in the channels that book is sold in. And so I had been thinking for a long time, I really want to do a Kickstarter. And then COVID really kind of crystallized that line of thinking for me. You saw the temporary shutdown from Diamond. I think a lot of publishers have reacted strongly in reaction to that. There's been a lot of tapering of the acquisitions. There's been a lot of slowdown on the release schedules.
Well,
yeah, we had talked with, it's not to say we hadn't talked with traditional publishers about the OZ, but they were saying, oh, well, it's not going to, we wouldn't be able to release it until end of 2022. And my line of thinking was I had written 6 issues of this book, normal sized, and we had 2 of them drawn. And I was like, why are we waiting? Why do we have to wait for permission anymore? We could just release this on Kickstarter. And so I realized I could kind of solve one problem with another. I could, jump into the deep end with Kickstarter the way I wanted to, and I could introduce myself to that community with bringing my A game. And so, it gives the OZ a home, and it sort of introduces us to the Kickstarter community. And, based on at least the way the first day has gone, it feels like a gamble that was well taken. And it's not to say that I love working with traditional publishers. I'm working with a traditional publisher on another book right now that will probably be announced in the next few months. Spencer and Locke 3 over at Action Lab, Grand Theft Astro, which we're slowly but surely getting the art together.
Hasn't that been two years since we've
It's been 2 years. It's been 2 years. And so that book is written. The art is finally starting to come together. Jordi Perez's schedule is finally starting to open up. I certainly have nothing against traditional publishers, but I think the way of the future for creators, especially now, and I think COVID's been a real wake up call to a lot of people, is it's going to be a mix between the direct market, Kickstarter and other crowdfunding, online, web comics, digital, and working outside of the direct market. So, such as working with traditional publishers, traditional non-comics publishers, like book publishers. And that's sort of my goal, is that's kind of the way I want to start diversifying my career. Because ultimately, I love the direct market. I love the publishers that are working within it. But ultimately, we want to start circulating between all these different markets. We want to build a wider consensus, and we want to invite everybody to the table. And this feels like the way to do it. And so, yeah, I feel like, it was also just very empowering for me as a creator. I felt like I thought I knew a lot. I knew how to write a comic. I had practiced. I thought
okay.
I'm decent at it. I'm okay.
My bookshelf reflects that. Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit. I knew the project management side of it because I've worked with artists at this point, and when you're in the indie trenches, the way I've been in the indie trenches, you're your own editor. You don't have a project manager or an editor to really, do all this. David Avalone, hi, buddy.
Yeah,
and then having worked, with Action Lab, you start to learn how to do your own publicity and your own marketing and sort of your own con hustle. And, but that said, I didn't know anything about printing. I didn't know anything about production work. Now I do. And that's really empowering. That's sort of, I think that was the missing piece of the puzzle, because now, just the same way that anybody can be a comic creator if they have a pen and paper, now anybody can just self-publish their work if they know how to do it. And so I think that's been a really important learning curve for me. And the fact that people seem to respond to this and there seems to be a demand for it, it's very encouraging. And it makes me feel like, okay, I think there are certain realities and certain directives that publishers have. And sometimes it can be a little Byzantine, they can sometimes they're speaking their own language. And I get it, that language works for them specifically, but sometimes that language also leaves money on the table. And sometimes that language leads to sort of a creative conservatism, not politically speaking, but just sort of, playing it safe, saying, oh,
it's a business, and you just put in an art. Let's see, no, yeah. I'm going back to the tote board, still looking good. Oh, it just did go up again.
Oh,
okay,
hey,
yeah,
I like that. Hey, that went up. That went up nicely. That's cool. Almost at 400 backers.
Okay, so we got Dean Martin in the wings. He's going to come out and do a little something,
But yeah, it's the thing that I've always had. This has been my career from start to finish, and hopefully not finished anytime soon. But every time I pitch something, people are like, "That sounds cool. I don't know how to sell it," and that's been like universal from Spencer and Locke to Going to the Chapel and on. And I'm sure that was the same way with the OZ. I'm sure there were people who were dragging their heels thinking like, it's cool, but like, it's not the thing that like, sets their hair on fire. And now I think seeing that demand on Kickstarter, I think that's going to change some people's minds. And, I anything, my grandfather always used to say, anything worth doing, it's never easy. And this feels like kind of the epitome of that. I've always said comics is the best and most fulfilling job I've ever had. And it's also the hardest thing I've ever done. I've worked corporate gigs and, I had a lot of mental bandwidth for that. I'm like 24/7 thinking about this job and I love it. That's what I asked for. I wanted a job that I could eat and sleep and breathe. But yeah, it's got its own challenges and pitfalls to it. And I think Kickstarter is a way to kind of cut through some of that noise and just be unapologetically who you are as a creator and, let the market decide if there's interest in it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you've had a busy day, and I appreciate it because you did say like you probably wolfed down dinner in between conversations and checking things. So thank you for taking the time for actually, saying, hey, let's talk about this on the day it launches. So then we've got one more comment from David Avalone, and he's totally right. Yep. No one is ever going to be a better cheerleader for your thing than you, even the most energetic publisher.
Yep. No one loves your babies the way that you love your babies. Absolutely right.
That's right. So we thank David for coming in. Layman show, and we're going to call John Layman out for this. But thank you. Going to let you go tonight, and
thank you.
We'll stay in touch. Looking forward because this book is obviously coming my way at some point soon. And I say it's double sized. I went
double sized.
I've had a long day too. It's double sized, so it's 2 issues combined into one. Yep. And you gave me a quick glimpse at the 20 pages, the first issue, what would have been. It is strong, and like say with the Oz books behind me, I'm an Oz dilettante, but enough of one. I've sampled from a lot of different viewpoints of it, and I love this concept. So I did that last summer. And so people watching, absolutely, there's still time to join this on Kickstarter. It goes till
it goes till September 16th, literally 30 days. So yeah, you can back us at bit.ly/the comic, which we have written down here right below.
There we go. That's so much better than the banner I was running across, which is involving so many things. So that's just me. I'm old school, really old school. So David, thank you. Have a good night. And
thank you
for those tuning in who tuned tonight. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and use your powers for good.